90 mil radio.
You are listening to the cloud chambers of the primordial
Welcome back to the Cloud Chambers. My name is Finko Zong, and I'm sitting here with one of my all-time favorite musician friends and also one of my favorite collaborators. Still gonna be a little bit mysterious about who that is, but yeah, it's a special episode today, and not only just a special episode, because after this episode we will just be connecting straight into Primordial FM, and we will be listening to Carl OG's live set hosted by Barabbas, aka Wasco. So yeah, I'm really excited about this evening. But this episode is really special as well because we're doing a music showcase, and there are only just a few of them each year. So it means that it's that time of the year where we will be listening to the universe of one artist. And in this case, it's also going to be a producer musician in particular. And we will be diving deeper into an extended interview at the end of this music session, listening session. Okay, so this showcase is dedicated to the Brussels-based artist who goes by the name Rowan. So everyone who has worked with Rowan could also describe him as one of the crispiest, most eclectic motherfuckers out there. Deep dive, headbanging electronic sound producer. Every time I play an instrumental of his, people are like, who is this? He studied audio engineering and also worked as both a studio producer and a live technician for live projects. He's also on stage with Julie Rains, and now the time has come finally, after he has been like locked up in his basement for years and also recently expanded into a new music studio to cast a spotlight on him. He's also known from projects like he's held projects like Echt and Toucan, but now he's been digging on his own solo debut EP Fluids. So yeah, Rowan, could you just tell us a little bit more what we're gonna listen to, or do you just want to stay mysterious?
First of all, thanks a lot for hosting me, Vinko. I feel quite excited about sharing my first EP and discuss about music with you. And I think I won't say much before we listen to the EP.
I assume we can just get started. That's a good idea. I know you're also feeling a little sick today, but I wanted to tell you I'm still really grateful you could liberate some time to make this interview happen with us. So let's just listen first to your music, and then we will just talk more about it. So the project you're gonna listen to is called Fluids. I hope you enjoy.
90 mil radio. You are listening to the cloud chambers of the primordial 90 mil radio. You are listening to the cloud chambers of the primordial 808.
Rowan, that's a fucking crazy EP. It's so amazing. I love it. So many sounds I've been hearing. Can you tell us a little bit more? What's the general idea behind this EP and also the title?
Actually, there was no specific concept behind this EP, but more of a situation. This release is a kind of start signal to myself to start sharing and releasing my own music. I've been making music for more than 10 years now, but I hadn't really considered putting out something personal since then. During this last year, I've helped a lot of people with their tracks and project as a producer and sound engineer. And aside from that, I was creating and digging into my own sonic world, but without taking the time to properly finish things. So I've decided to open this chapter by kind of closing another one, the one of, eternal demos. So I put together a selection of unfinished ideas. I thought it was sad leaving in on my hard drive and started to plan some time to bring them to life. The tracks from the EP are mainly 4 years old demos already, so I don't fully identify with it, and it really took me some time to put my head back into them.
I'm glad you also opened that hard disk again. For real, I understand opening demos from a while ago is not an easy process.
In the end, I think that it was really interesting to approach them with my actual influences and inspiration, which for sure have evolved and moved since then. By stepping back, I should also mention not overthink and accept where the initial idea brings your mind, even if it doesn't resonate with the intention at first sight.
So I also hear you try to go back to the original ideas. Tell us a little bit more about how you built this and how do you feel about the process right now?
In the end, I'm happier with how the process went because before that, I was always thinking that all demos have like an expiry date, and I imagine that for some it's the case, but in this case, I managed to prove myself the opposite.
Could you also explain your choice for the title, like fluids?
I have to say that I have quite a fascination and long love for things evocating fluids, as water and what goes with it. Water is a lot of different things. It's a source of life and also the symbol of emotions. It can have so many different states and shapes, and it can adapt itself easily. I love that idea of a fluid containing information, traveling from a point to another, and adapting itself anytime. It inspires me a lot, and I thought that it represented well the tracks of the EP.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. I also really feel your EP is very liquid. Now, tell me a little bit about that liquidity. I know you are a man of many influences. What kind of genres would you situate yourself in?
I'm not sure to be on point and precise about the different genres, but I know that I have been inspired by a lot of different things this last year. I could mention bass music, trap, dubstep, halftime, break, jungle, drum and bass, techno, trance, IDM, ambient, but also more experimental stuffs. Recently, I learned that some people are using the term deconstructed club music, which talked to me because some sound and aesthetics found in my tracks are club oriented, but the edits are not so much for me.
That makes a lot of sense. Tell me more about your process of inspiration. How do you get inspired?
I get inspired by quite different stuff. A frequent inspiration is seeing passionate friends and people around me, creative or not, working in the music or not. What inspires me is how someone can be dedicated to a cause, to a craft, to an act of building an universe, fictive or real. This can feel like magic and be really impressive sometimes, and it inspires me to continue and build my own universe. Another thing that inspires me is like, how to say that, all the things that I don't know about, like the act of being curious and learning new things. This brings me to link that thought with nature. I'm always amazed to realize the thing we don't see at first sight, especially the living things of the nature that are kind of hidden if you don't look right. To realize that always makes my imagination work a lot. There are so many things outside of the human world that we don't know about. In the same idea but quite different, I should mention also touring with bands. Touring outside of Belgium often gets me inspired, like discovering how people live outside of the city I live in is something mostly exciting. Music scene are so vast and different, and I always love to dig for new ones.
Who or what inspires you? Are there some artists or some musical movements that you look up to? I know you are a digger, so share with us some names.
Quite a lot of stuff coming from the UK. I can start with Warp Records, especially in the 90s, but also some actual releases. I could mention the classics like Fxstring, EAFX, Otaker, Boards of Canada, Square Pusher. There are also labels like Planet Mu with artists like Luke Vibert or DJ Rashad, or Astrophonica with Fracture and Sully. In the same era but another continent, I have to mention Drexia, a duo from Detroit who did a lot for electronic music and techno also, in my opinion. I should say that a lot of my inspiration in EDM, jungle, breakbeat, footwork comes from this era. For more modern stuff, I can mention the label 2020 London with artists like Ivilab, Hijinks, Turuda, Two Fingers, or even the Belgian project Up High Collective from Leuven, I think. There is also the UK label The Sounds Recordings with artists like Deft, Samurai Breaks, or Drum Skull. Another label from the UK is DNO Records with Kershaw, Clearlight, and Sentient. There is also the label Yuku from Praha with artists like Chuli, Koido, Traka, 96 Back, Muad'Dib, or Current Value.
Now, if there is an artist you would ever want to collaborate with, who do you think would be that person?
This is actually not something I've already thought about, but I know that in the future I would love to collaborate more with other artists, producer, or also vocalist and musician. I think that I have to mention James Holden because I've been clearly touched by his album Idiots Are Winning. Before knowing this one, I was not aware that electronic music could feel so alive and expressive. On this album, the drums and synths sounds so human and real. I'm still wondering how he did that, and I don't miss an opportunity to share this album with friends that don't know it. And in more recent producer, I could mention Object, Zuli, Slickback, Chuli, Upsami, Aitoa, Deft. These are artists that I found really inspiring and clearly playing on a blur line of different genres, which is something I really love and feels important in my vision of creation. And in another register, I would also love to collaborate with non-musical artists. I mean, like creating soundtracks for exhibition or performances, in the idea of doing more free and experimental things, you know?
Whenever I'm entering your studio, it really feels like I'm entering some kind of spaceship. Could you tell me a little bit more about all the technology and all the machines you are working with?
Indeed, it's kind of a spaceship with a lot of cables and pods, and they do bring me to other dimensions. In some periods, I feel like I spend more time with machines than with humans. I should say, working with machines changed a lot of things for me. In the last years, when I was pretty busy as a sound engineer, I spent most of my days working with the computer, and at the moments where I would give myself some time to produce music, I was totally bored and uninspired by being again in front of the computer, you know. Then I progressively started to build a little family of machines that would help me to stay away from the computer and that would also inspire me. I could mention that I started to work with modular since when COVID first arrived, as we were locked in and I had time to start learning these machines that are quite time consuming. In the process of the EP, but also my actual one, I almost always start tracks by jamming with different machines and patches on the modular. At this stage, I often aim to already have different parts and ways to link them inside the machine. After that, I do some recording of the jams into Ableton, sometimes 5 minutes long, sometimes half an hour. If I'm working with the modular, I try to take different intentions and variations, as I will often break the patch after the session. And when it's breaked, I will not be able to come back to it again. This may feel hard sometimes, but it helped me a lot to make some choices already at this stage and then deal with what's available after in the editing process. In that editing process, I take the time to listen to the jams and select my favorite parts, and then I try to make the first edit. Then often goes a little stage of mixing or sound upgrade, we could say, to push the ideas and intention further. After that, I often start to jump again above the first edit to do some overdubs, of course, if it's needed. I should also mention that I'm super fan of most of Ableton's native tools and that I use and overuse them a lot on a daily basis. Concerning the machines present in my studio, you can find different drum machines and samplers, old analog scenes, and different modular racks. Some of these machines are modern, some are really old and buggy. Everything is routed to an analog desk in which I can send the different machine to different FX tied to the auxiliaries, and then everything can be recorded on separate tracks to give me more comfort in the edit or mixing stage. You can also find some mixing machines like compressor and distortions in racks that I sometimes abuse in my creative process.
What is your favorite tool to play with?
If I had to choose a favorite machine, I think I would say the modular, as you can go really far in terms of sound design and that it quickly puts you in a mood of inspiration, but it's also the most time-consuming machine in my room, so I try to carefully choose the moment we spend together. In that same idea, I sometimes even hack the moments with the modular as sound design research or ambience recordings, because I won't be in the mood to construct a track in an effective way, but more of rendering in the sounds in a free way. I can also mention the more recent machine from Electron that I find really fun to play with and quite complete to be enough on their own to produce like modern tracks.
Now tell us, what are you working on in the background that you could tease us with?
These last weeks I've been busy creating a first solo live act. As for the idea of releasing a first EP, it was also an idea for this year to start to share and give life to my music and creation in this way. I've created tracks especially for this live, but also have incorporated an adapted version of a track present on the EP. I had quite a lot of fun creating this live, and it was really interesting to work on something different than the EP that can take its time to build itself. Most of the tracks are 7 or 8 minutes long, and as I had been booked to an event with a lineup quite experimental and softer than what I used to do, I decided to go for some more evolutive and melodic tracks to begin with. Still, the live is at 160 BPM and the second half has a lot of energy with some sound closer to aesthetics of the EP.
In the meantime, I'm also playing a couple of minutes from this live session Rowan is talking about.
In terms of production and studio exploration, I have a lot of different tracks to sort out and finish. I plan to take some time soon to choose where to focus next. There are different ideas and zones in the oven. I could briefly mention the idea of an EP infused with bass music, halftime, and dubstep. Another one with tracks started some months ago with inspiration of jungle, break, and drum and bass. All of these ranging from 170 to 200 BPM. I also did a selection of more experimental tracks that goes really deeper in the approach of sound design and that I could define as more mental. More recently, I also started a series of tracks inspired by footwork and acids in the range of 160 BPM. It's kind of fun because it was a reaction to having been to a DJ spin set during a party of the Tech Life record label, and also the acquisition of an old analog drum machine. Aside from all of these more club-oriented ideas, I've been recording and gathering for the last 2 years some ambient and more experimental exploration from the modular or samplers, and I'm thinking of releasing them one day under the form of a mixtape or album, I don't know yet. For now, these are mostly selected cuts from one-shot session recordings, as I find it difficult to catch the same mood to rework them, but in the end, it's not really the idea to rework on them.
What do you think of the future of your artistic projects, and what do you think we can expect of you in the future?
My first wish would to be able to share my music more often while I continue to explore, dig, and build my different universes. In this idea, I suppose release some EPs and play live show or DJ sets. Some tracks are close to be finished, but for now I have no idea what the next release will be and in which order it will be released. But for sure it will be in the zone of the previously mentioned ideas of EPs. On the live side, I'm thinking of building a more club-oriented live that I could play late and be at least 1 hour long. But I also love the idea of creating a more experimental and narrative set. Maybe a mix of both, or maybe through two separate things, I don't know yet. Next to these ideas, I wish to spend more time and be present inside the scenes that operate the genres I'm inspired by and meet, I hope, passionate and inspiring people.
Do you consider your music as a vehicle for movement and thoughts, or is it more like a transmission of a feeling or a mood of something?
Actually, I didn't really reflect on the concept of my music, but I think that I really see it more like a transmission and expression of different feelings than a vehicle for movement and thought. Maybe for more recent and unfinished creation, I can say that I have voluntarily reflected on the direction to take and try. But in this case, the case of the first EP, I can say that the tracks are more like illustration or paintings of my emotions and moods in that period. I think it also explains why they have so much contrast and different moods inside themselves. I've never considered myself as someone at ease with speaking and the use of words, but on the other hand, I believe deeply in the power of nonverbal and everything we can say and feel outside of the use of talking as a bias of expression. This is a subject that interests me a lot and it takes place in a lot of forms of art, including music.
Would you consider your music somewhere politically intertwined with today's society, and how does the politics of this world inspire your music or contrast your music?
In a direct way, I don't think so, but in another way, I could say that some of the intense emotion and aggressive choices of sounds and texture present in the EP are a form of expression of chaos that needs to exist and that makes echo to the situation of the world we live in. And beyond the outlet it gives me by creating these tracks, I imagine it can serve other people.
If you were to focus on any other kind of art form, what would it be?
Recently, I've started again to give some time and interest to analog photography. I really love it and it feels good because it makes me look at things around me in a different way, more present, I would say. Another practice that I love and consider as a form of art is cooking and the act of sharing food.
Can you tell us also a little bit more about that passion of cooking of yours?
It's one of those things that takes my head the most out of the work. I often see it like meditation, something I do slowly and in full presence. Like music, I consider a large zone of research driven by technical knowledge and cultural influences. In my opinion, pleasure is not found in the execution of a perfect copy, but more in the understanding and deviate use of it. I think that, like in music, you can take bits of everything that inspires you and further create something new with them. I could say that discovering and eating good food is one of my favorite things to do.
Now, if you were to think about the future of electronic music as a broader concept, where do you think you would see it go? Like both concept-wise, tool-wise, like maybe both in the short-term future in like 10 years, let's say, and maybe also in the long-term future, like 200 years ahead? I know that's a bit of a crazy question, but I always like to ask these things.
That's really interesting questions. Tool-wise, things are changing and evolving so fast with technology. There are already so many tools and different ways to create music nowadays. Some people are still going for always and machines to work with, while others choose to go with the most modern tools or even AI tools. I think that I don't really realize what is happening with AI and it is already present in the music domain, but it's not something I want to give attention to, at least for now. There are already so many techniques and tools to learn and be busy with, but in the end, I don't think that the tools define intention and sensitivity in the creative process. And even if it's called electronic music, it's the interaction between the human and the machine that matters. I wish that in the future, limitation will be put to the tools and that more interest will be given in how humans can interact with the machines in some form of exchange and not a replacement. I've been to China recently and I was quite surprised and also shaken by how present robots were already in the daily life. I'm not sure that reducing daily life interaction will make people happier. Concerning the concept, it looks like some electronic music genre created almost 30 years ago are coming back to fashion, while new genres and subgenres seems to pop every month. I can then imagine that in 10 years it will be similar, like all genres getting some hype again and lots of new ones trying to launch something different. While in 200 years, it's really hard to imagine if music will be something that still belongs to humans. But in some ways, it's also difficult to imagine something really new and different, as so many things have already been done in music. I'm quite curious about how futuristic this can go.
And what kind of state do you like to enter when you are creating music?
I feel that there's not one precise state or settings, but different situations that are better suited to wake up creativity. Sometimes creativity and ideas can pop when they're not supposed to, and that I have to be busy with something else. It happens quite often, and depending on the small time I can take to diverge, I will take some notes or record bits to come back to later. Sometimes I have to be in a day without anything else to do or any urge in order to get enough headspace to feel creative. And from what I notice, the classic of being creative at night almost always work for me, but I try to find other ways to feel disconnected enough during daytime to deep dive into the creative process. In the same idea of feeling disconnected, sometimes early mornings works well too.
Would you consider yourself a psychonaut of some sort, or are you somebody who dives deep into the subconscious?
In some ways, yes. I clearly spend a lot of time traveling in my head. Depending on the period and how busy I am, I often feel like I'm in a close relationship with my dreams and the subconscious mind. If possible, when I wake up, I try to take the necessary time to gather and collect what I remember from my dreams in order to reconstruct them when they are still fresh and then to be able to consult them later. It reminds me that a lot of things we have to learn are in ourselves, even if some dreams look like crazy nonsense.
So you heard it, keep believing in your dreams. There might be something true to find there. Now that said, this is the end of this artist showcase. If you want to support Rowan's music, you can also buy his music on Bandcamp. He's also on socials. I will make sure that you can find his links in our description. But in the meantime, I'm also wanting to say that the whole evening is not over yet. We are going to transmit the next episode within the Cloud Chambers constellation, and let's just go straight to Primordial FM, where Barabbas is waiting to host Carl OG. Thank you so much for tapping in. I hope you had a great time already, and see you in 2 weeks with another Cloud Chambers episode hosted by Bad Carmel and produced by Boyo Levity. See you later. Stay cloudy.
Hey, what's going on, motherfuckers? Thank you so much, Finko. That was some dope shit. Rowan, big shout out. We're cruising the Primordial FM vibes. We got Carl OG who's gonna take us through some ambient spaces and hit us with some drums at some point. We're in for a journey, man. Smoke that spliff, look at the stars, do whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable, because we're traveling tonight, baby.